We will now switch it over to our Mariners season in review. This might be a long one. So, I mean, at this point, we might just make it its own thing. There's a lot of different things we wanted to go over here, and talked about some potential targets for the Mariners here ahead of free agency, but I think that'll be its own segment we'll do next week, looking at some of the different positions, some of the different players where Seattle might upgrade, look to when free agency comes, and if they're deciding to make trades. So we will now head over to our different sort of superlatives, MVP, defensive player of the year, all that sort of stuff. We look over to MVP here. It doesn't make any sense to go with anybody outside of Julio Rodriguez, a guy that at the beginning of the year, a lot of people were just excited to see him make the big league roster. Some thought he might not be ready yet. You know, in a month in, he didn't even necessarily look ready, but he then really started to adjust. Julio leads the team in WAR, wins above replacement, was just the spark plug for this team in center field, and is just as advertised. If you've paid attention at all to the Mariners farm system, to the minor leagues at all, Julio Rodriguez making his ascent was something that was noticed by many. He never played in AAA, which is kind of incredible to think about, and he's 21 years old. Again, I will bring that up again. He and I share the same age. It's really interesting to note the comments from the front office members, Jerry Dipoto, Justin Hollander, Scott Servais, that basically their plans for Julio, their wants, his homework for the offseason is to just take a rest, because he's never played this much baseball in his life in a year. It can be a lot as a 21-year-old to have all this attention that he's got going on, and they just kind of want him to sit back and be himself and, go visit home, go be a 21-year-old, which I don't think is bad advice for the young guy. I mean, he's 6'5", 2-something, slams homers, has all the ability and potential in the world, has this massive contract, but he is 21. He'll continue to grow. I'm sure of that. I'm sure he'll get back in the cage, back to work at some point this offseason. But yeah, I think Julio needs a little bit of a rest. So we go from our MVP pick to pitcher of the year. I went with George Kirby. Now, this might not be the most conventional pick for some. If we go through the rotation, I know that Luis Castillo was an exciting addition. He signed an extension. We really saw what he could do. A prime example of that is the wild card matchup, game 1 versus the Blue Jays, where he went 7 1/3 inning shutout against a really talented Blue Jays lineup. But he was acquired at the trade deadline, so I don't think that qualifies. Robbie Ray ate up a bunch of innings and I believe led the pitchers in WAR. He had his down moments, though, and there's things that you'd like him to improve upon. Logan Gilbert easily could have been this guy in this position, had a really hot start, had some struggling months for a little bit, was able to come back and turn some things around. In the game that the Mariners clinched their postseason berth, he gave them 8 one-run innings. But Kirby was a guy that, similar to Julio, George Kirby could have been in Rookie of the Year running. But Kirby never playing in AAA, never playing. I think he might have played very little, if any. Came in, pitched the most innings he's ever pitched in a year. I know at the trade deadline, the Mariners said, we're going to monitor his innings, but then he came back, and after like a week or two, he got back to his normal workload. He, as you can see in this photo here from the ALDS Game 3, he pitched an incredible shutout through, I believe, 7 innings for the Mariners. I mean, for a 24-year-old rookie to do that in the biggest game in this franchise in, a few decades, it's big. And the thing with Kirby is he can continue to just go up. So that's my pick. This is a guy that you are looking at that could be a potential Cy Young winner in years to come. So that's where I went with Kirby. If we look at reliever of the year here, I think Andres Munoz ran away with it. There are some other solid picks you could make here. Matt Brash was really solid out of the pen. Paul Sewald had another solid year. He had some moments. Whenever Paul Sewald's having a downtime, he's given up homers, which isn't ideal. Diego Castillo had a solid stretch, but outside of that, kind of struggled. Penn Murphy had a really good year. But Andres Munoz really came out and lit it up. The 23-year-old, yes, 23, is incredible, topping out at 103 miles an hour. That slider was really valuable and was voted as the best slider in all of baseball. He just continues to light it up, and he's going to be an exciting guy out of the pen. I hope they keep the Los Bomberos introduction for him at minimum. I don't know if they'll keep that nickname next year for the entirety of the bullpen, but Munoz is incredible out of the pen, and just great that you were able to, I believe, extend him a little bit last year and really see what he was able to do this year. So this next one's kind of tough because we go rookie of the year. It makes no sense to go even. There we go. Makes no sense to really go further into it, but it's obviously Julio. Again, to have someone like Julio be your all-star here, one of your two all-stars, to be an all-star, to be your most valuable player in terms of WAR and in general, is a big deal. And, to have someone be so recognized like Julio, with how many games I was at this past season, I saw more 44 jerseys than I did anything else. Usually that's Griffey jerseys, Ichiro's, there's some Edgars mixed in there. But no, there's so many Julios. I know that the team store had to continue to order Julios because they were trying to keep up with the demand. Just incredible, just really incredible to see the impact that Julio had in his first professional year of baseball, and knowing that he can only go up. He should win Rookie of the Year. But yeah, I mean, pretty blown away by the year that Julio had, and it's only going to go up from here, really. We look at Defensive Player of the Year. This was kind of a tough one because it's very vague. I know that there's like 3 levels to baseball, from the battery of the catcher and the pitcher to the infield to the outfield. But with Cal being the only Mariners player nominated for a Gold Glove as a finalist, and Ty France should have been in there too, and Julio probably too. But with Cal being the only one nominated, I had to go with Cal. Had the most runners caught stealing in the American League, second in all of baseball, and was the I believe, what was the stat here? Let me get that stat. Was one of the most valuable players, third most valuable defensive catcher in the majors with a mark of 14 runs saved. Cal was a guy that struggled early on too. He came up this year and, was looked at as kind of the guy behind Tom Murphy after Tom Murphy had a good beginning of the year. Then it kind of fell on Cal. Cal struggled, had to go back to AAA, and then was able to come back and had a great rest of the season. Obviously had that incredible memory of hitting the walk-off that sent this team to the playoffs, but was more than just a homer guy. As you can see, the defensive value that he brought to this team. We now look over to Utility Player of the Year, and the Mariners have a few of these, and Dylan Moore and Sam Haggerty. There's a couple guys that could have fallen into this role as well, Abraham Toro, but Sam Haggerty was the one who made the most impact this year. Dylan Moore had his moments, but Sam Haggerty had a really great, solid overall year. Was great in the outfield when they needed him to be. I believe he played some second base as well. His offense was valuable when we needed it, and it really sucked not being able to have him for the playoffs. So really intriguing to see what sort of value Haggerty can add next year. I don't think he'll grab a starting role from anybody. I know that people have hoped that he would take the left field spot from Jesse Winker, but I think he starts on the bench, and he's just going to be able to be one of those guys that continues to contribute throughout the year, just like the Mariners like. The Mariners like having these versatile guys that can add off the bench and that can do a ton of things for them outside of just one primary position. That's why you see guys, like Adam Frazier, who can play second base and can play the outfield, played some shortstop this year. Ty France plays the corner infield. There are a bunch of guys that they like that they'll bring in that can do multiple things. like Dylan Moore, like Abraham Toro. So we look over. I know I just mentioned Jesse Winker, but we'll go to our bounce back candidate for next year. Oopsie, wrong one. Bounce back candidate for next year, and Jesse Winker. I know that he had a tough year. There was a lot of ire from him on his defense, where there were some balls that you would think would be an easy out, and it just looks like he did not care to make an effort to get there. His production was down after a career year this past season, but with the comments that Jerry Dipoto made about how he was dealing with a neck injury as the end of the season and a knee injury throughout the entirety of the year. Obviously, I'm sure stuff like that's going to impact his offensive performance when you really can use your legs to generate a lot of power in baseball. Playing in Seattle with the Marine layer here, I know that some of these balls that he would hit in a different ballpark didn't carry as much as they would if he was in a different spot. But with that all being taken into account, hopefully getting healthy this offseason, and then the shift being banned, it only makes sense that Winker will have a bounce back sort of year. Not going to say like an MVP type season, but something that the Mariners can really get some more actual offensive and hopefully defensive value out of this upcoming year. So that's our bounce back candidate. We look over here to our games of the year in the regular season and postseason. It wouldn't make sense to just pick one game of the year, considering the postseason as well. If we look at game of the year in the regular season, that series finale, game 3 versus the Atlanta Braves, you come out and you're leading Atlanta. I believe it was like 6-3 throughout most of the game. You think, all right, you're going to take the series against the defending champs, which still, I know a lot of championship winning teams lose a bunch of their best players and they might have like a championship hangover. Atlanta was able to make the playoffs and we're still a great team throughout the year. And you were dominating them in the series finale that would have won it for you. And then you start to give up runs in the 8th inning. And then in the 9th inning, you blow the lead. And you're like, crap. Everything kind of just went downhill. Julio Rodriguez, as you can see pictured, hits a home run to tie it up in the bottom of the 9th. And then Eugenio Suarez hits a walk-off to give the Mariners the win in dramatic fashion in that one. That was a game where, as the innings went on, there was an Atlanta fan near the press box that got really, really, I'll use the word obnoxious. And it was like, man, I got to go back and write an article about this game. But they were able to come back and it was like, what just happened? Kind of in a similar vein, our game of the year for the playoffs, the AL wildcard game 2, that 7-run comeback that will go down in history. Toronto teams continue to choke. This was a big one. I mean, this sends you to the ALDS for the first time in 2 decades, and you win the first playoff series. It wasn't like you made the playoffs for the first time in your drought, and then you're a one and done. No, the Mariners were able to get in. They took care of business in game 1 and then closed the series out in game 2 with this dramatic comeback. As you can see here, we have a photo from the watch party. So that was, again, if you've got differing opinions, please feel free to let me know. But these were just what, in terms of with the Atlanta game, it really showed me what this team's capable of in terms of its resiliency. We look at how this team was down by 10 games a few times, I believe, under 500 throughout the year. Had some injuries that throughout the year that hindered them. Julio was out for periods of time. Eugenio Suarez was out for periods of time. Mitch Haniger missed a lot of the season. Ty France missed some time. JP missed a little bit of time. So it's like you miss a lot of your key contributing position players to injury, and you were still able to win 90 games and make the playoffs and win a series in the playoffs. So all of that should be taken into account when looking back at this season. We look over here now to best newcomer. You could include Julio in this because it's technically his first year with the big league club, but Eugenio Suarez, we were here recording an episode of the show when we got the news that Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker had been traded to the Mariners during spring training. Had to break that news live. And at the time, it seemed like Gino was just sort of a 3-outcome guy who had played poor defense and was kind of we had to eat his contract. And he was more valuable than Winker by far. I believe he's up there in terms of WAR in the top 5. He had 30 homers this year. He had several, I think he had 5 defensive runs saved, which is way up from his last 5 years. It was just incredible. It was a great clubhouse guy. So Gino was all you could have asked for and much more. So that's why he gets the nod there. We look at areas to improve. I mean, you got to get more. I know we've got a photo of Gino here. It's more so because he's got the bat split, but you need to be more consistent on the offensive end of things. Too many times, we look at certain games like you beat the Astros 11-0 in the first game you played them here at home. And then you'll play the next game and you'll get shut out and have like 2 hits. You got to be able to, in free agency or via trade, be able to add a guy that's going to be able to help you stay in ball games throughout the year, because there's, I'm not going to say someone's going to have a 162 game hit streak, but someone that's going to be more reliable, another just proven bat in this offseason. So looking in that vein, we look at potential departures. These are potential. I don't want anybody to get too mad about it. I'm not saying they're gone. I'm not saying they're off. They've been shipped off already. We look at the 2 pictured. I mean, there could be more. We're going to look at this more in depth next week. But with the fact that we've got this entire Mariner season in review and then the Sounders season in review, I didn't want to just, pile on and pile on and pile on. Mitch Haniger's contract is up. I mean, we could look at it from both aspects, from the Mariners side of things to Mitch's side of things. Mitch has said he wants to be here. He's provided great offense to this team. He's in this 2 really fullest years while being healthy. He's been an MVP candidate for the Mariners. On the other side of things, how often is he, like I said, when he's been healthy, and that hasn't been enough for this team necessarily. Again, with availability, how often can I rely on you to come through? How often can I rely on you to be in the lineup? Another side of things is for Mitch, maybe he wants to check out the free agent waters. Maybe he gets a better offer somewhere where they can guarantee him playing time. They can guarantee him a bunch of money. But it sounds like with Justin Hollander, general manager Justin Hollander, that there will be talks, there will be discussions, and they plan on bringing him back, which will be an interesting thing for our potential targets list. But then we go over to Adam Frazier. Frazier's an interesting case because it isn't really known how he feels about being here. Last year he was an all-star, had the most hits in baseball for a good amount of the year. This year had some stretches, but his bat really couldn't stay consistent, like a good amount of the offense throughout the majority of the year. And the comments from Jerry Dipoto that the team is looking to get one of these 4 coveted shortstops in free agency and move them to second base doesn't really hinder well for Adam, unless they plan on having him on the bench or really being a super utility sort of guy, which I don't know if he wants to do that. So that's why those 2 guys are highlighted here in our potential departures list. We will have more of an in-depth look at these things next week when we look at free agency and all that sort of thing. So that brings us to potential targets. Now, these might be long shots, but the Mariners have said they want to be competitive. The general vibe around the league is that they've been putting the other teams on notice. They've said that they want to spend in the offseason with the extension to Julio Rodriguez. At least Luis Castillo's agent said this team is serious and they want to win. So maybe that attracts a guy like Aaron Judge. I know that there were a lot of things throughout the end of the season and even in the playoffs where he was, kissing the Yankees logo and people were like, oh, he's coming back. He's coming back. What if he gets a better offer somewhere else? If he isn't a Mariner, I hope it's not in the American League, but maybe you get Aaron Judge and you really solidify yourself as a World Series contender. Xander Bogaerts hasn't been happy. Well, Xander, pardon me. I said Xander. That's not right. Xander Bogaerts is a guy that hasn't been happy with the money that Boston has been offering him. Maybe, hey, you're able to get him to come here to Seattle to shift to second base. That would really be another great addition to this offense. I mean, a lot of the shortstops in free agency, whether it's Correa, which I don't think he'd come to Seattle, Correa, Bogaerts, Trey Turner. I feel like there's something I'm missing here. But out of there's 4 of them. I'm remembering 3. But if you're able to get one of those guys and they're able to move, that really solidifies your middle infield, and that helps you get another really solid bat in the lineup. But that's, again, if people want to come here and if the front office is really serious about spending this money. So we'll go into this more next week with our free agency previews. And then, so just a general prediction for the 2023 season. I really do think this Mariners club can make the ALCS. I don't want to guarantee you a World Series appearance. That would be a lot. And I don't want to have to look on that like a cold take exposed. But with the potential that this team showed about the younger guys, the younger potential, the core here that's already locked up, this team can do damage. And you could argue that they were the second best team in the entirety of the playoffs. Well, not the entirety of the playoffs, my bad. The entirety of the American League. You look at how the Yankees got shelled in their ALCS against the Astros. The Mariners put up much more of a fight against this Houston team, and I think a lot of Houston fans can agree with that. So I don't know. I feel like if you, depending on what you add, you can do a lot of damage. But that's the first thing, is seeing what you're able to do in free agency here. So we'll keep a big eye on that. I know that kind of goes to rest here, and it's sad and it's disappointing because you thought you could be in it. But this Mariners team did a lot of great things. I was thinking about this a lot before I came down here, and even last night. Last night I felt burnt out. I was like, man, I'm doing a lot. I'm doing too much. With the Rays playoff loss to Kansas City. But this morning I woke up and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, life is life, let alone sports, is about moments and, cherishing certain moments. And, a lot of it is how you respond or react to those moments. How will the Mariners react to this incredible past year that they had? If they're able to load up and add more, then we might see this team in the World Series. If they stay stagnant and they're not able to do enough, I don't know what they do, So in that same vein, you got to think about this Mariners team. You think about the moments like the Atlanta series, like the 14-game win streak, the home run derby with Julio Rodriguez, the incredible Cal Raleigh walk-off homer that sends his team to the playoffs. I will remember that for the entirety of my life. I will remember that game and how loud that crowd got and the emotions of it. There was a guy running around in the stands with his shirt off, people just giving random strangers high fives and hugging each other. Life is about moments, and these moments are what makes sports so great. It's why we do these things, So although it didn't end, Mitch Haniger talked about it, the goal is to win the World Series. This is a great first step. And whenever that does come, where you see, I don't know who it'll be, Cal Raleigh or probably Julio Rodriguez holding up the World Series trophy in front of these Mariner fans, you'll remember moments like the drought ending, because that's where it all started, So, yeah. We have some minor team news, I guess, not technically minor, but on the 20th of October, as I kind of previously mentioned, catcher Cal Raleigh was named a finalist for the Gold Glove Award at his position in the American League. Raleigh led American League catchers with 25 caught stealing this season, second in all of baseball, ranking ahead of Tucker Barnhart, Christian Vasquez, and Sean Murphy in the American League, while trailing only JT Realmuto with 30 for the MLB lead. Cal also ranked third amongst AL catchers, fourth in the MLB, with 9 catcher framing runs saved, according to Baseball Savant, ranking ahead of only Jose Trevino and Jonah Heim in the American League. According to Fangraphs defensive runs saved metric, Raleigh was the third most valuable defensive catcher in the majors, with a mark of 14 runs saved, ranking only behind Jose Trevino and Adley Rutschman. The 6'3", 235-pound backstop allowed only 3 passed balls in 917 innings behind the plate, tied for the second fewest in the American League among catchers with at least 900 innings defensively. That doesn't make you appreciate Cal Raleigh. I don't know what will. Excuse me. We look over to some league-related notes here On the 21st, Lance McCullers Jr. was hurt by champagne. The Astros right-handed pitcher had a start pushed back after getting hit on the elbow by a spare champagne bottle, celebrating Houston's ALDS victory. Also on the 21st, the Rangers hired former Giants manager Bruce Bochy to become their new manager. The former Giants manager who won 3 World Series titles with the ball club in San Francisco is hired as Texas's new manager. That worries me a little bit. I would not like to see Texas return to prowess. The baseball ratings are rising. MLB posted its most watched division series in 5 years, with viewers aged 18 to 34 up 22%, which is pretty good to see. I talked to somebody about this before we started recording, but if you really want to watch baseball grow, if you want people to watch your product, you want people to watch your game, you got to make these games more accessible. So that's a good sign, but baseball can do more. So, and you haven't seen it already, the World Series matchup is set. It will be the Philadelphia Phillies versus the Houston Astros. I don't really need to say it. It should be obvious, but obviously we're all rooting for the Phillies to beat Houston. That's all you need to know. Game 1 is on Friday. So I would say we look ahead, but now in summary, the Mariners season ends with a 90-win, 72 record in the regular season. They sweep the Blue Jays in the wild card. They get swept by Houston in the ALDS. Sorry about that. In the grand scheme of things, this playoffs logo right here was what mattered the most. So we look ahead next week to free agency, potential departures, stuff like that. So it's the season may be over, but things don't end for us in our coverage for the Mariners.